Okay, folks, here's a little information overall about your skeleton bibliography, which I'd like printed out by Monday or October 17th. Make sure you check all of this information right here. You got your check boxes. Click, 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 click. All these things you should be able to do. One thing I want to mention, you're required to list and attempt to contact one individual group, museum, organization, or historical society by the time your skeleton bibliography is due. You don't cite them unless they give you information. So you can just either, if you sent an email, print out the email and staple it to it. Or at the very, very end, you can say, hey, Mr. Taft, this is who I contacted. Here's the phone number. I haven't gotten anything back yet. You don't have to get something back. You just have to contact. Okay? Use this as a checklist, and I want you to turn this in. I want you to self-assess using this, and I want you to turn it in with your bibliography. All right? And that way I will add to it as well and give my kind of comments. But you should always use rubrics to assess and self-assess. Sound good? Okay, now let's go over to Noodle Tools, and I'll give you some ideas on how I want you to print it out. Hey there, young historians. This is just a quick overview about how I'd like you to print out your bibliography for submitting it next week when you submit the skeleton bibliography. You're going to want to go to Noodle Tools and open up your bib. Here's my sample bib. You're going to see that you come to this dashboard, and there are a lot of things you can do on the dashboard eventually if you want to, like research question, and if you wanted to actually write a paper, you can start a paper. I believe it'll link to your Google Docs, which is kind of cool. You can do a to-do list down here. That's an option. But we're going to look at how to print this thing out. So the next thing I want you to do is go to Sources. All right, this will load up your sources, and as you can see, I have a few loaded up right here. You'll notice that right now I don't have anything under this little description thing right here, this area, and I want you to have a description of your sources as primary or secondary. Easy way to do this. I'm going to look for my secondary sources here. This article is a secondary source. This book right here is a secondary source. This book and this book. Those are all secondary sources. I click those little boxes. I go down here to Description, select an attribute, Secondary Source, and Apply. And it'll make them a secondary source, as you can see. I'm going to do the same thing with my primary sources. Select an attribute, primary, and apply. Now I've got my secondary and primary sources. If you look at your rubric, it says that you need to sort by secondary and primary sources. So here, sort, primary, secondary. Now I've got it divided up. That's what I want you to do because that's what NHD expects you to do. And when you go to a competition, this is what's your bibliography will look like. Now, you kind of make sure you got all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. Remember, I'd like one annotation for a primary source. You'll see how long mine is, 3 or 4 sentences. One annotation for a secondary source. Same thing, 3 or 4 sentences. Good rule of thumb is you describe the resource, maybe a little bit about the author if you need to, what you got out of it, and maybe how you're going to use that information. Okay? When you're ready to go, we're going to go to Print Export. And you can either print or export it to Word or print or export it to Google Docs. Doesn't matter which way, because I still want it printed out, physically printed out. You do want to go to formatting options though first. See this formatting options? I'm going to click that. List title, works cited, that's fine. We can fix that a little later, but right now that's fine. Page header. You can choose some different page headers. You could put your last name, so I'm just going to put Taft on mine. Set header. And then I'll automatically put on page numbers. This is important though. Annotation spacing. Please look at this. I want annotation spacing to start on a new line. It's going to save you something, and it's going to save me something. And I'll get to that in a couple seconds. Once we've done all those formatting options, I'm going to export this as a Word doc. We'll click, it'll download, and I'll get my little Word doc right here. Okay? Now, if I go back and I export it to Google Docs, mine isn't hooked up with my Google Docs yet, so I'm going to allow it. And there's my Works Cited. And there's my Works Cited. So actually, I think I am going to go off Google Docs here because it's probably easier for you guys as well. So here's now what I want you to do. Notice that it's divided into primary and secondary sources. Yay me. What I'd really like you to do, and this just helps out, okay? After every source, put a carriage return. Just like that. I think that'll be really helpful to me. It's also going to be really helpful to the judges when you work with the judges. You can as well bold all of these so that these stand out from your annotations. That might be something that we do in February and March. You can do it now. That's up to you. I kind of like it. But don't worry, if you don't do it, it's not like I'm going to come and break your legs or anything like that. That's only if you owe me a lot of money from a loan. So, here I've got my skeleton bibliography. If I wanted to change it, I could put Taft skeleton bib. You'll notice I've got my header up here. Folks, get used to typing your name on things instead of having it typed and then writing your name on it. It just looks a little nicer. And then I'm going to print this bad boy out. All right? Okay, so that should answer any questions for you. Make sure you staple that baby together and give it to Doc or I, and we'll be giving you feedback as soon as possible. Also, to our next NHD classes, we now are going to move into the note-taking segment. You're not done getting resources, but now it's time to take some notes. So starting on Monday, October 17th, I know that there is an NHD class that day. We want you to have with you a resource or 2 or 3 that you can start taking notes on, and also the materials you want to use to take notes. In addition, I only want 1 bibliography from each project, which means I don't need a bibliography from 3 people. If there's 3 people in the group, I just need 1. All right, so looking forward to seeing what kind of resources you're finding. Keep looking for resources and keep going with these projects, because now comes the sort of laborious but also fun part. You get to actually learn about what you chose to research. Take care, my friends.